Okay, we are recording and I want to welcome everybody. This is your host, Susan Rosen, and my guest today is Jeff Chilton, right?
Chilton.
Chilton, yeah. um, and Jeff is a mushroom grower, expert, very, very knowledgeable person who has been in and around mushrooms almost since you graduated from college, I think it looked like. And he studied ethnomycology, in case you didn't know what that is, at the University of Washington in the late 60s. And then he went into a 10-year career as a large-scale commercial mushroom grower. He is also the co-author of a book called The Mushroom Cultivator, which was published in 1983. And in 1989, Jeff established Nammex. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but okay, which is still his company where he works primarily. And it was the first company to supply medicinal mushroom extracts to the nutritional supplement industry, which we all know has mushroomed, if you'll pardon the use of the word, since then to a much larger sector. In 1997, he organized the first organic certification workshop for mushroom production in China, which is, at least as far as I'm concerned, extremely important. And Jeff is a founding member of the World Society for Mushroom Biology and Mushroom Products. That was in 1994, and he is a member of the International Society for Mushroom Science. Probably some of these things are things that a lot of people listening probably had no idea that they even exist.
People don't even know what a mushroom is. Come on, Susan.
No, that part they know, but it's the little button things that they find in the supermarket. So not lastly, but Nammex extracts are used by many supplement and food companies, and they are noted for their high quality based on scientific analysis of the active compounds. And we will discuss that a little bit more and kind of talk a little more about the active compounds and why those are important in supplements and the day-to-day eating even
Absolutely,
of
yeah.
mushrooms.
Supplementation and mushrooms as food, because I consider uh, mushrooms in the diet to be very important.
No, I totally agree. Um, and just out of curiosity, maybe you can just give us a 2 or 3 minute kind of overview, because there are so many different kinds of mushrooms out there, and a lot of them are things that people probably see in the supermarket and have no idea that they're even mushrooms.
Well, when I first started growing mushrooms on a
Uh-huh.
very large farm in 1973, that farm was growing agaricus mutton mushrooms, and those are what you'd call the button mushrooms.
Oh, okay.
And we've all got them in our supermarkets, and they've been there a long time. And what's interesting is that classical nutritionists at the time said, "Oh, mushrooms, they taste good, and the flavor, and they're kind of a garnish that you might throw in somewhere, but they have no nutritional value."
Mm.
Well, wrong, totally wrong. And the reason they said that, this is the interesting part, was because they're low in calories.
Interesting.
Back
Okay.
then, if a food had no calories, it was kind of like a non-food. Well, the fact is that mushrooms are highly nutritious. They are, and the thing to remember is every mushroom's going to have a different nutritional profile.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you some ranges here: 20 to 40% protein, high quality protein, all of the essential
Hmm.
amino acids, with except for maybe one, um, mostly carbohydrate, but good carbohydrate. They do not have starch. So mushrooms, what they have for carbohydrates is they have uh, beta glucans, which
Mhm.
we'll talk about more because they are what makes a mushroom medicinal. So they're
Hmm.
50% beta glucans in that carbohydrate. They have other carbohydrates, one called mannitol.
Mm.
Mannitol is a very slow acting, slow digesting carbohydrate that is really it's not like starch where you eat something starchy and up goes your blood sugar and down again the other side. Mannitol is just slow acting. It's really important these days, I think, for a lot of
Mhm.
people to have those types of foods and to stay away from high glycemic index foods. Those are not what we
Yeah.
want to be eating. Um, it's got low in fat, of course, low calorie, low in fat. It's got good amounts of vitamins B1, B2, and B3, up to
Oh,
25% of our
okay.
IDA of B2 and B3. That's riboflavin and niacin.
Uh-huh.
And then mineral wise, it's got a good amount of potassium and phosphorus, and then just a normal amount of the other minerals that we would expect to see.
Mm.
A very, very high quality food. And the other thing about mushrooms, very high in fiber.
Oh, okay.
So this is something that is going to not only feed your microbiome, so it's
Mm.
considered a prebiotic, but we all
Uh-huh.
need fiber. And a lot of people maybe aren't eating enough vegetables or whatever it is. And again, a mushroom's not a vegetable. It's really interesting. Mushrooms have their own kingdom. They're not a
Ah.
plant. They're not an animal. They sit in the middle of the kingdom of fungi.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I just consider mushrooms to be the forgotten food, kind of like the missing dietary
Mm.
link. And the beauty of mushrooms are that not only are they nutritious, but they also have these compounds, these beta glucan compounds, which make them medicinal. So for me,
Mm.
food as medicine is
Mhm.
as good as it gets. And in the Bay Area, you
Mhm.
can get up to 6 or 7 or 8 different mushroom species now.
Huh.
When back when I was started
Yeah.
as a mushroom grower in 1973, we had one mushroom in the marketplace. That's the button mushroom.
Okay. Okay. Now that makes sense. That makes sense. So are there are there mushrooms that are just in certain geographic places that only grow there or developed or whatever,
Well,
just
remember,
because of the weather and the
well, let me just ask you something. Have you
Mhm.
ever been to a mushroom farm?
No. But then I haven't been to any farm anyway, so I'm
Well,
probably the
but if you
wrong
go,
one to ask.
well, no, but if you go out driving around through
Uh-huh.
certain parts of California, you're going to definitely pass through some farming areas, especially if
Oh
you're out in
yeah.
the Central Valley or something.
Yeah, but
So
we don't
we've
usually
all
stop.
we've all been able to, but we've all been able to see
Yeah,
fields of
yes.
whether
Yes.
it be vegetables or
Grains or whatever,
grains
yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, the reason that nobody has any idea about
Mm-hmm.
mushrooms is because in the US, they're all grown indoors in very large warehouses.
Ah, okay.
Okay, and why is that? Well, primarily because mushrooms need high humidity.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
why mushrooms only come up at a certain time of year. Well,
Mm-hmm.
when is that? It's in the fall. What happens?
Mm,
The temperature drops,
right.
the rains come,
Yeah.
humidity goes up, up come the mushrooms with them. If it's too dry, the mushroom will start to come up. It will just stop growing because it can't.
Ah.
All that dry air
Mm-hmm.
just keeps it, and it just wants to hunker down. It doesn't want to grow any further. So that's why up here in the
Okay.
Pacific Northwest, we have one of the best climates
Oh, I bet.
for mushrooms. So one of the best places in the world for wild mushrooms is
Mm-hmm.
here in the Pacific Northwest. But
Mm.
if we want to grow mushrooms, we can grow them anywhere because all we need to do is we need just the mechanical equipment that provides
Okay.
heating, cooling,
Uh-huh.
humidification, fresh air, all of those things.
Okay.
It's interesting about mushrooms is they share some attributes with humans.
Huh.
Mushrooms breathe in oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide
Really?
like we do.
Wow.
Their storage carbohydrate, unlike plants, which produce a lot of starch,
Uh-huh.
is glycogen,
Right.
like our storage carbohydrate.
Hmm.
So, so it's really an interesting organism, again, sitting between plants and animals, sharing attributes with each. But
Hmm.
in general, we are not that familiar, especially if you're living in places where there aren't a lot of
Right, which makes
mushrooms.
sense.
You know,
Yeah.
when I grew up in Seattle, I mean, we had mushrooms everywhere, so I could get out early and go mushroom hunting. And
Yeah.
you know, the fun thing about mushroom hunting, Susan, is it's like a treasure hunt.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, you get to go out, you walk through the woods, it's beautiful.
Hmm.
You know, it's not too cold, it's fall, and if you find these, let's just say, choice edible mushrooms,
Hmm.
it's like, you know, the pot of gold, the treasure chest, and that you found these mushrooms and you're just like, oh, this
Hmm.
is fantastic. So certainly as a youngster going out and hunting mushrooms, it was, and even today, I mean, any mushroom hunter, I mean, a lot of them, as you might know if you know any, are kind of fanatics, and they
Yeah.
will not tell you where those mushrooms grow either. They will not tell you where to look or to dig.
Oh,
Can't dig up
interesting.
that treasure chest.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, they're not going to share, obviously. That's funny.
Uh,
That's funny. Yeah, the only
yeah,
kind of mushrooms I've ever seen growing are the ones that come up on the grass, the
yeah,
outside, and you just want to
yeah.
get rid of them. I'm sure they're probably not even edible though.
Well, I mean, you know, it's hard to know,
Yeah.
but you know what happens every year in the Bay Area? You have the San Francisco Mycological Society.
Mm.
They have a show every year. You can
Ah,
go to that show.
okay.
They've gone out and they've hunted all sorts of different
I
mushrooms.
bet.
They
Yeah.
spread them out on tables. They identify them. They show you which ones are edible, which
Wow.
ones are not, and so
Uh-huh.
on. And if a person ever wants to go out themselves mushroom hunting with experts, they
Hmm.
love to have
Oh,
people
I
come
bet.
along. Yeah, so anyway, because you know, it is it's one of the major mycological societies in the U.S.
Huh. Wow. Wow. Interesting. Yeah, I guess that's from all the fog, huh? There's a lot of
Well,
them to go
and
out and
again,
find. Yeah.
in the when you guys have rains, which
Yeah.
probably the rainy season's coming up not too
Well, let's hope
far from
so.
now,
Let's hope so.
because you know what happens,
Hmm.
fall kind of starts first temperature wise
Yeah.
up here in British
Right.
Columbia, and it
Right.
slowly moves down the coast.
Right.
While you guys are still basking in probably nice weather, we're sitting up here and it's,
Yeah.
you know, 40 to 50 degrees, and you're probably 50 to 60 degrees, or
Right.
maybe
And
warmer.
and we're sitting here waiting for the rain, and we're not getting any. We haven't gotten
And
any.
it's just
We
been
are
coming down
officially
in,
in a drought. We are
no, oh
officially
yeah,
in a
well, of
drought.
course. I mean, that's kind of a standard uh,
Didn't
time
used to
for.
be. It didn't
Yeah,
used to be.
I know. Well, we're getting lots of rain here. That's not a problem for us. Sorry
Well,
about that. I
I was
wish you
going to
could
say,
say the
lucky
South.
you. Yeah. No, no, exactly. That's what they do the weather every day, and it's like, okay, well, here's the rain up here. We're stuck in the middle. They're getting rain down south of us.
Oh,
And the Bay
really?
Area is just, oh yeah, no,
Oh
there's this
goodness.
high sitting over us and squeezed between two lows. And
Yeah, I know, but let's face it, the reason people live in California because you don't get a lot of rain. It's
well,
like
we used
sunny
to.
days and wonderful weather.
When I
And
was
I know
growing
you,
up, we did.
yeah,
When I
right.
first came up to the Bay Area to live, we got a lot of rain. It was raining all the
Okay.
time, but
Huh.
it's
Well,
yeah, we
I don't
won't get
know,
into that.
Susan.
That's not the subject of the
Yeah, that's right.
podcast.
That's right. I don't
That's a
want to get into
different
your
discussion.
dreams here.
Exactly, exactly. So, okay, back to the subject of mushrooms. Um, so tell me a little bit about how you ended up starting Nammex and getting into that side of
Well,
mushrooms, because you obviously had
yeah,
been in the
the growing mushrooms
the
for food,
scientific, yeah, and the
and
scientific
and
side
that
of it, right? The um,
yeah, the medicinal side of it,
Mm-hmm.
and what are the medicinal aspects and so on. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I was really lucky because when I was at the mushroom farm working there in the 70s, we had a Japanese scientist there. Now, I'd been reading and studying mushrooms and at
Mm-hmm.
university, not only for food, but for my actual field of study was anthropology.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so I put it together and studied the use of mushrooms worldwide as food, medicine, and in shamanic
Ah.
purposes.
Oh,
So
okay.
so
Okay.
when I went to the mushroom farm and was there for 10 years, we had a Japanese scientist. He was growing three other mushrooms. He was growing shiitake, he was
Mm-hmm.
growing enoki and
Mm-hmm.
oyster mushroom as part
Mm-hmm.
of a research and development project. So I was
Oh,
involved with
okay.
that as well. And for me, it was like, great, I'm learning how to grow other mushrooms too.
Yeah.
And in fact, we introduced the very first fresh shiitake into the US market in 1978 in the Seattle
Wow.
area.
Wow.
I mean,
Okay.
do you eat shiitake mushrooms?
Oh, yeah. 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 And the other two you mentioned as
I
well.
love
Especially you
shiitake
go to
mushrooms.
Japanese restaurants, they have even more of
I
that. Yeah.
Yes, I think shiitake mushrooms, everybody should be eating shiitake mushrooms. And I definitely, encourage people, if you're going to eat one mushroom, do shiitake. It's delicious.
Yeah.
At any rate, after I left the mushroom farm in 1983, um, I worked, I had my own company, which was to produce mushroom spawn, which
Mm-hmm.
is the seed. I mean, think about this for a second. Mushrooms do not have seeds. How do you grow
Mm.
a mushroom?
Yeah.
Like, if they don't have seeds? Well, mushrooms have spores, and let me just
Oh,
let me
okay.
just describe this
Uh-huh.
organism for you, because the whole thing of mushrooms is kind of like, well, where do they come from? It was not here yesterday, and there it is. Well, let's just they start out with spores. So we've got spores, and the spores are on the air currents. They land on the ground, they
Uh-huh.
land on wood. When conditions are right,
Okay.
those spores will germinate into a very fine thread-like filament. That
Hmm.
filament is called a hypha. When multiple of those filaments come together and fuse, they form a network of filaments called mycelium.
Okay.
This mycelium is the actual body of the fungus. Think of it as kind of like a root system in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the ground, it's in the piece of wood. We don't even know it's there. We're walking on top of it half the time. We don't know it's there, but it's there.
Mm-hmm.
When conditions are right, which here's in the fall, or even where you are is in the fall, when we get some rains, and hopefully
Mm-hmm.
you'll get some rains. Um, at that point, now that vegetative body of this fungus, which we call mycelium, it's the vegetative body, it will produce a mushroom. It's been consuming, and what it does, it's actually consuming all the organic matter out there. There are
Oh.
microorganisms in our soils and out there in
Mm.
nature. They are consuming all of that organic matter,
Hmm.
like for example, annual plants. They come up, they die. What happens to them? They have to get broken down, and that is the job of fungi, bacteria, molds,
Mm.
bugs.
Okay.
All of those
Okay.
things are consuming that organic matter. So up comes the mushroom. It goes through maybe 2 or 3 weeks to where the cap opens up. Underneath, you have all these
Mm.
gills. Out come
Uh-huh.
the spores. Now we have a completion of this life cycle. So you've got, every plant, let's say, has parts. Like we've got a tree, and it has leaves, it has flowers, it has fruit. Each one of those parts may have different medicinal compounds in them.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
So if you go out for looking for a supplement or something, it's always like, okay, ginseng, what is it? It's the root.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ginkgo, what is it? It's the
Right.
leaf.
Yep.
So these
Yep.
are all. So with
Yep.
this mushroom, we have what we call three plant parts: spore,
Mhm.
mycelium, and mushroom. And it's the mushroom that we
Ah.
eat. It's
Okay.
also the mushroom that is the primary. It's what's been used for thousands of years in traditional Chinese medicine.
Okay. Okay.
So now getting back to how I started my company, now that we've established what this organism is,
Mhm.
in 1989, I decided, okay, growing mushrooms and being part of this growing mushrooms as food is not something that I want to continue to do.
Hmm.
But mushrooms have been used as herbal medicine for thousands of years.
Oh
They're
yeah.
still being used that way. So I think I'll do that. I'll start to sell mushroom extract powders to the
Okay.
supplement industry. And in 1989, I went to China to a International Society for Mushroom Science conference. And then for the next 10 years, I went back to China every year,
Mm.
going to conferences, going to mushroom farms,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
going to research institutes, processors, and I established relationships with people there. Because what I realized, and this is the important part here, is that we can grow mushrooms in the United States or North America for food, and as a business, I can make a profit. So my fresh mushrooms, I can sell them for $5 a pound. But supplements are dried powders. Have you ever been into the supermarket and looked at the little packages of dried mushrooms that are sold?
Mm-hmm.
Expensive,
Oh yeah.
really expensive. I mean, you look at this little package, it's like maybe not even an ounce, and they're selling it
Right.
for $3 or $4. And
Yeah.
you're like,
Yeah. At
what
least.
is going on? Well, a
Yeah.
mushroom's 90% water. So
Uh-huh.
I can't grow mushrooms in North America and actually produce them for supplements, because what I'm getting $5 for, now I have to get $50 for that same pound
Hmm.
now that it's dried. Knowing the economics of mushroom growing, I
Yeah.
realized that. And so I figured out, well, I'm going to have to grow my mushrooms in China, process
Mm.
them there.
Mm-hmm.
So I established these basically these really deep relationships with people
Hmm.
over there. And in 1997, look, I've been organically certified since
Mm-hmm.
1993, my company, and for me that's really important. So I
Uh-huh.
went, okay, look, I'm bringing mushrooms, I'm producing these from China. I have to certify them. I have to make
Right.
sure they're chemical free. So
Mm-hmm.
I took OCIA, one of the largest organic
Mm-hmm.
certification
Yep.
companies in the United States, to China with me. We had the very first organic certification workshop for
Wow.
mushrooms in
Uh-huh.
China, 1997. Now there are like hundreds of tons
Oh,
of
I'm sure.
organically certified mushrooms coming out. China produces 85% of the world's mushrooms.
It doesn't surprise me.
I mean,
They've kind of
well,
taken over any area like that they've gotten into over the last 20 years.
well, and
And it makes
agriculturally,
sense, you know.
well, certainly it does. And also remember Asia. I mean, they eat lots of
Oh
mushrooms in
yeah.
Asia,
Yeah.
lots of
Yeah.
mushrooms.
Yeah.
And what happened in the 1980s was Japan and Taiwan
Mm.
moved most of their mushroom production over to China. So they
Mm-hmm.
really started, and look, why do people move their
Yeah.
businesses over there? Well, for one, the labor is much cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
They're very efficient and organized.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for
And they have a lot
me
of the
now,
experience as well.
well, they do. I mean, they started growing shiitake mushrooms in the 12th century. They were the
Yeah.
ones who developed how to grow
Mm-hmm.
shiitake mushrooms. I mean, it's an amazing
Mm-hmm.
culture. And
Yeah.
look, I understand when people say, "Oh, I don't want to eat anything from China," but the fact is that we grow all of our mushrooms deep in China, back in the
Mm-hmm.
mountains, away from all of the industrial pollution. And look, industrial pollution is not only in China, it's
No.
in the United States too,
Oh my
right?
God, yeah. Yeah. And
I mean,
Japan
and
and
Japan, any
Taiwan. And that's right.
industrialized country, I mean, the
For
pollution in
sure.
certain areas is
Yeah.
horrific.
Yep.
It's like, wouldn't you like to eat something grown on the Gulf Coast of the United States where all the petrochemical
I don't
companies
think
are?
so. I
Well,
don't think
no,
so. And the
no, no,
fish and
no.
the shellfish and stuff from there.
Well, exactly. My
Yeah.
God, horrible. It's just
Mm.
like when I go to China too, I'm not going to eat the seafood that they grow over there because they grow their seafood along the coast and it's all polluted waters. I mean,
Mhm.
no, I don't want to eat that. Sorry about that.
Mhm. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
look, I'm up here. I've got fresh salmon, any kind of fresh seafood up here that is chemical free. It is
Mhm.
wonderful. No. So that's we do and so in 1990 after forming my company in 1989
Mhm.
I went out to my first what's called the Natural Foods Expo
Ah,
down
yes.
in Los Angeles
Oh, yes.
and I walked around all of the different companies that are selling herbal products. Hey, have you ever heard of medicinal mushroom? No. Well, have you ever seen a reishi mushroom? No. Okay, well, here, this is a reishi. What do you think? Huh? Are you sure that's real? Looks like it kind of feels like a piece of wood. Well, yeah, it's very woody. You're not going to eat this mushroom. Uh,
Mhm.
so, all through the 90s, Susan, I really had to educate the
Mhm.
industry
Mhm.
to the fact of mushrooms being used in traditional Chinese medicine, perfect for the supplement market.
Uh-huh.
And that's what I did. I mean, I wrote articles, I had books
Yeah.
published, all sorts of things to educate people about them. And it's funny because when I think about it, when no company had a supplement product in 1990,
Yep.
today, everybody and his brother does, and are
Please.
scrambling to get more of them. And if you go into a like Whole
Yeah.
Foods or something, and you look at the
Oh,
supplement section and you look for mushrooms, and it's like, oh my God, where do I even start?
yeah. Well, and just everything as far as the supplement, right? I
Yes,
mean, not
yes,
just mushrooms. I mean, the whole area takes up this huge part of all of these
true.
supermarkets. Some of the places are just like pharmacas, just that's all
Like,
they have,
yes,
right?
that's
It's
right. That's like a
um
GNC or something like that. They've
yeah,
got that's what it is. All supplements and vitamins. And you know
yeah.
what's interesting to me, having being a child in the 50s,
Mhm.
my father had us taking a multivitamin in the 50s.
Mm. Thought a lot
I
of
mean,
good
it's
that did, right?
well, and yeah,
There's
and
so
it's
little of
funny.
all of those things in it in order to make it in a swallow size you
Yeah,
could
I know.
swallow.
Isn't that interesting? It'd be kind of interesting to see exactly what vitamins they put into that little tablet, and it was an awful tasting little green tablet that had some kind of coating that would immediately dissolve in
Yeah.
your mouth, and it
Oh
just tasted
God.
horrible.
Oh, gross.
But my father, bless his heart,
Yep.
he also had us eating what we called brown bread, which was whole
Yeah.
wheat bread, when
Uh-huh.
all of my friends had this wonderful white bread.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was a well, but it's interesting because, well, probably don't need to go down that road, but I was just going to say, there was so much less back in the 50s and 60s. They didn't have all these chemicals and everything that they add to things now that you have to
True.
be worrying about. And so a lot of the whiter bread actually still had a lot of the wheat parts in it, right?
Yeah,
And
and
we would go to the bakery. We never bought it from the supermarkets. We went to the
supermarket.
bakery and bought bread,
The Yeah, oh man,
you
don't get
know.
me started about bakeries. That's one of my favorite stores. I love bakeries. But look, the actually though, I mean, let's face it, in the
Hmm.
50s and 60s was the beginning of all of the food
Yes.
processing. And so
Yes.
today
Yes.
we have, I mean, think of all the center aisles in all those
Oh,
supermarkets. It's for the most part all processed foods.
yeah.
And look,
Yeah.
my father, my grandparents were farmers.
Oh my
They
God.
actually lived on a real farm. They
Uh-huh.
grew things. They
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
their cash crop was strawberries.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, I mean, I picked strawberries one summer up there. Man, was that
That was
fun.
enough, huh?
Didn't make a lot of money, but I picked straw. I mean, that was in the days when you actually up here in the strawberry country, you'd
Uh-huh.
have any kids that wanted to go out
Oh
into the
yeah.
strawberry fields, you know, in season, they
Uh-huh.
had buses where you could go, and you'd
Yeah.
get them on the bus and off you'd go to the strawberries. You'd pick strawberries, you'd come back, you'd make some money
Bring
during the
some
summer,
and bring some
whatever. I
back.
mean, yeah, yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
plus, they had a food garden that was
Oh.
unbelievable, and they had corn in there, all sorts
Uh-huh.
of vegetables.
Yeah.
So when it came time for Thanksgiving, you had, I mean, I'll never forget those
Mm.
Thanksgiving dinners.
Mm.
They were just fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, back to mushrooms.
Yeah, I know they didn't
Um,
have any mushrooms in their Thanksgiving, but
no, 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 no. But it is kind of interesting. My my best friend, actually, was starting in high school, who I'm still friends with, is is Japanese, and so I used to go over to eat at her house. And so that's when I was first introduced to all the mushrooms and all that. My mother
yeah.
loved Japanese food. They had been to Asia probably in the 70s or 80s. I
My
would,
favorite food for sure,
yeah,
Japanese
and
food. I love it.
yeah, and she got turned on to that there. And growing up in LA, of course, there was Japantown, and there were more
Well, on the
Japanese
West Coast, I
restaurants.
mean, yeah, the
Yeah.
whole West Coast. I mean, we've got that
Hmm.
Asian culture here and
Yes.
foods and so
Right.
on.
Right.
Lucky us.
Okay.
I mean,
So let's talk about mushrooms as I don't want to say drug. That's not the right word.
supplements,
Supplements,
uh, medicinal
medicinal
mushrooms. Sure,
mushrooms. Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
and a little bit
yeah.
more because I'm not sure people really they know of them, but I'm not sure people really know what the difference is.
And what they're doing and all that. Well,
Yeah.
look, the basic property of a medicinal mushroom,
Hmm.
and this is due to the fact of these compounds that we call beta glucans,
Okay.
is immunological potentiation.
Okay. Now
So
now define that.
what
Yeah.
that means basically is that whether you're eating mushrooms or
Uh-huh.
supplementing with mushrooms, these beta glucans, we actually have receptor sites in our
Oh.
small intestines.
Uh-huh.
And when we're eating the beta glucans or supplementing, the beta glucans will hit those receptor sites, and then that will stimulate the production of immune cells.
Oh,
So
okay.
when we're when you have mushrooms in your diet or supplementing, they're sort of sitting there in the background, and I look at it as preventive medicine. So
Mm,
they're going to prevent. They're all antifungal, antibacterial, antiviral
mm.
even. So those they will there and if you start to maybe get a cold or something like that, well, they can be there helping you to get over it or keeping you from being sick with those types of uh,
Interesting. Okay.
illnesses.
Yeah.
So that is the real key, and that's why I'm saying to people, look, get them into your diet first because that will give you, in a sense, a shield, a layer of protection there, which
Mm-hmm.
should help you through those seasons when all of a sudden everybody's getting a cold or the
Mm-hmm.
flu or something. Now
Mm-hmm.
let's face it, there's a lot of things that go into good health, but
Right. Right.
the
Yeah.
foundation is your diet.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're not getting enough of in your diet, or if there's something missing, that's why
Mm-hmm.
people supplement because they're going, oh, I'm not getting enough of this vitamin or that vitamin,
Mm-hmm.
and with herbal medicine, okay, yeah, I could use something that could help me enhance my immunity a little bit. So these beta glucans, that is the activity that they have. Now, certain mushrooms, because all of what we would call medicinal mushrooms will have these beta glucans, and those mushrooms are, and you can uh, buy some of these right in the supermarket again and put it into your diet. Shiitake,
Mm-hmm.
um, maitake, oyster mushroom, um, uh, enoki take. Ever
Mm.
have you ever had enoki taki? Do you know the enoki mushroom? It's you buy them
Mm-hmm.
in these packages that are kind of vacuum packed, and
Mm-hmm.
there's like 1,000 of these mushrooms in there. Long, thin
Okay.
stems, little
Yeah.
tiny cap.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Amazing, delicious, and they're kind of like noodles. You strip them down, you got thousands of them, and they're fry them up or something, or just like a
Oh.
noodle. They're delicious.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting. Okay.
so certain ones like the reishi mushroom, which we cannot eat because
Okay.
it's hard as wood
Mm.
and been used medicinally in teas.
Okay.
Now people
Yep.
actually put it into coffees and things like that. But the reishi mushroom
Yeah.
also has certain compounds called triterpenoids. These
Mm.
triterpenoids are actually kind of bitter. So a reishi mushroom in a tea or something will be bitter. So a lot of times people will take the reishi mushroom in capsules or something.
Oh, okay. That
That's
makes
very
sense.
good for our liver. And
Ah.
any benefits we can get for the liver, which is detoxifying our blood and things, is
Right.
helpful. So there's another mushroom that maybe you've heard about called lion's mane.
Oh, yeah.
And lion's mane, you can actually, I know you can get lion's mane fresh in your area because
Uh-huh.
there is a farm up in Santa Rosa
Uh-huh.
that's big enough to put that into
Mm.
probably most of your markets. Delicious, edible, but it's also a medicinal mushroom that you can get in supplement form. It actually has compounds that stimulate what's called nerve growth factor. And nerve
Mm-hmm.
growth factor is a amino acid that stimulates the organization and production of neurons.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
I actually tried taking that once in a supplement. Had a
Okay. Yep.
allergy
Yep.
reaction to it, but yeah.
Oh, you did. Okay. And speaking of that, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
what I tell people is, look, any food out there can in fact give you, there's 5% of the people that will be allergic to whatever food out there.
Mm.
So
Mm.
whether it be a mushroom or some other food,
Mm.
people have allergic reactions. There's always going to
Mm-hmm.
be that. It's unfortunate. The
I
lion's
know.
mane at any rate, and actually it's kind of interesting because we'll talk about the differences in medicinal mushroom products because that could be one of the things that was happening there. Are you
Ah,
sensitive at
okay.
all to grains?
Yeah, wheat in particular, but yeah.
But could other grains like oats or rice?
Yeah,
Do you eat rice?
I ate rice. I ate rice. Yeah.
Okay, okay,
Oats, I have sometimes.
okay.
I
Yeah,
don't
because
don't eat
that could,
very often.
believe it or not, that could have been the problem because some of these products actually have grains in them.
Oh, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I just didn't. I tried one kind and I wasn't about to start trying
Oh
all of
no,
them.
absolutely,
But
absolutely right.
yeah.
So
No, I have
so
that with other things, other supplements as well. I'm
yeah.
like a
Well,
walking allergy reaction.
so the lion's mane now actually it has shown that it has benefits for memory.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I was trying to
And
take it.
yeah, yeah, and look, I mean, I could definitely use some help. I mean, the times where you go, what was that word again? Or what was
Who's that
that
name?
person's name?
Exactly.
What,
Yes.
what?
Oh, I get that all
God,
the time. Yeah.
I know it's terrible. I mean, sometimes my kids do too. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not quite so bad. But at any rate,
Yeah.
it even they're doing experiments using lion's mane for dementia and
Yes.
Alzheimer's, those types of things. And,
Uh-huh.
and it's like, okay, this is great because maybe at some point they'll pull out those actives, develop a drug or something that
Ah,
is
yeah.
really effective. Whereas now we can
And then
we can
they'll
eat the
charge us
mushroom.
10 times as much. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh man,
Sorry.
I know. And who knows, there'll probably be side effects
We
as
won't
well.
go there. We won't go there.
No,
Yeah.
no, no. That's
Okay.
a whole nother podcast.
Exactly. Yes.
So lion's mane has
Uh-huh.
those benefits for people. There's another
Yeah.
mushroom out there called cordyceps,
Yep.
which has been used traditionally for fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
weakness, lack of energy. So we
Yeah.
can't get those here in the market for food, although we can in China, and they are delicious. They're a
Oh,
funny little thing. They
interesting.
they look kind of like a little blade of grass. They're just a small squiggly thing, and you, a plate of them, and there's just all these little, you go, huh, what's that? But it's delicious.
Uh-huh.
So cordyceps is one, actually now a lot of our customers put that into um, athletic
Oh,
types of
right. Okay.
products, and so that's in a sense where that kind of fits into this whole mix. But essentially there's multiple different
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm
attributes
sure.
to the different mushrooms and how they fit into this. But just for a minute, let's talk again about quality of
Mm.
supplements. And God, I mean, I hate to say this, but 50% of what's on those shelves is just worthless.
Only?
Not just mushrooms.
Only 50%?
Absolutely.
Oh, I would have thought it'd be
Okay.
more than that.
Oh, listen to you. Only 50%? Are you kidding me?
I know.
Oh my
You have to
goodness.
be so
Wow.
careful on the
Well,
companies and where it's,
you
you know,
do,
with
because
them.
look,
Yeah.
Susan, the business of the
It's
United
a
States
it's
is
business.
business.
It's
And it
money.
doesn't matter what you're selling,
That's
because
right.
all it is we got to sell you something. And that's
Oh
what's
yeah.
going on. I mean, my
Yeah.
God, it's like think about it. You elected a president
Now,
last
now,
time
now,
who was the
now, let's
best
not get
salesman in the
into it.
world. I'm
He
not going
was,
into
and he
that. No, I'm
still
not
is.
going. I'm just
But we're
saying.
not going there. Yeah,
No, we're not
and he
going there. No,
still
we're
is.
absolutely not. I'm just
But
saying
that's yeah. Uh-huh. Oh
salesman,
yeah.
salesman. I mean, it's like sales. It's terrible. So
Mhm.
the whole supplement
Yeah.
space, yes. And one of the primary reasons is not necessarily that the product itself is not a good quality supplement, but
Hmm.
oftentimes there's not enough of it in there to do you any, to give you any benefits. And
Makes sense.
sometimes it comes and it is adulterated with maybe just starches that
Uh-huh.
they've blended in to make
Right.
it, have twice as much to be able to sell you instead of
Uh-huh.
just what you
Uh-huh.
really should be
Yeah.
getting.
Yeah.
So when it comes back to mushroom supplements, here's what's going on. I was telling you about the plant parts of a mushroom:
Mm-hmm.
spore, mycelium, mushroom.
Mm-hmm.
Some companies in the United States, what they do, again, we cannot grow mushrooms in the United States
Okay.
economically, which is why we farm them in China.
Yeah.
They will take the mycelium, they will grow it out on sterilized grain,
Okay.
oats, rice,
Okay.
other grains.
Mm-hmm.
And when those grains are completely covered with this mycelium, which again, it's the vegetative body of this fungal organism,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in and of itself, if it were
Yeah.
100% just the mycelium, it would be okay. Not as good
Mm-hmm.
as a mushroom, but it would be okay.
Uh-huh.
But instead, they grow it out on this grain at the end of the process, which is 30 to 60 days of growing.
Okay.
And the grain is all covered with this mycelium. It looks very white from the
Uh-huh.
from the growth. They will dry it out, grind it to a
Uh,
powder, grain and
I was
all.
just gonna say, okay, got it.
Grain and all.
That
So
that
so
explains
when
it.
you actually test it, and that's
Uh-huh.
something we do on, we test and test and
Mm.
test. When you test it, instead of being high in beta glucans and low in starches, mushrooms do not have starch.
Uh-huh.
Instead, it is low in beta glucan and super high in starch
Okay.
because
Of the
of the
weight. Yeah.
grains,
Okay. That makes
which
sense.
are not removed from the final product. So
Yeah.
what you end up getting is you in a sense just get these capsules full of grain powder. And
Wow.
the companies that are ethical, and,
Hmm.
and nobody's ethical in my opinion that's selling these products. The ethical ones, if you turn it over into supplements facts, they will say mycelium, and in the fine
Hmm.
print where it says other ingredients,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they will say oats or
Uh,
rice or
okay.
something like this, and you're like, well,
Yeah.
why do I have rice or oats in this product? You, on the front label, it's got a picture of a mushroom. It says shiitake mushroom, reishi mushroom. Why do I have
Yeah.
grains in this product? What is the reason for it? There's no reason for it. The only reason they do this is because, again, it's expensive to grow mushrooms
Hmm.
for supplement use.
Hmm.
Did I
Hmm.
tell you that every single mushroom is harvested by hand?
Wow. No, you
Every
didn't.
mushroom you've ever
Yeah,
eaten has been
that makes sense.
picked
Yeah, no,
by
that,
hand.
well, yeah.
I mean,
No, if you
you
think
know,
about it, that isn't something they could get a machine to do. It's
they
just,
cannot get a machine to do that. They have certain like in Holland, they do
uh-huh.
have certain ways to grow
Hmm.
where they can grow them up and let them mature
Mm,
to where they actually have a stem, and then they can run a machine down there that slices them off. But
okay.
those are not the kind of quality that they put in the
Mm,
fresh market. That's something that they would send to the cannery.
okay.
But otherwise,
Interesting.
every single mushroom.
Uh-huh.
I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, one crop, like when we were growing the mushrooms, one crop was 20,000 pounds and probably 1 million mushrooms.
Wow.
I mean, I mean, it's just like unbelievable the number of
Yeah.
mushrooms that you're having to harvest in just an individual crop of, let's say, the agaricus. So they're expensive to grow and put into the supplement industry. That's why these companies in the, if you see a product, a mushroom product that
Mm-hmm.
says made in the USA,
Mm-hmm.
that's what it is. You can even, if any of your listeners have one of those supplements, pour out the capsule and taste it. It will be bland. It will not even taste like a
Um,
mushroom.
wow. Okay.
Buyer
Interesting.
beware, I tell
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. No
And
kidding.
look, probably 50%, maybe 60% of the what's called mushroom supplements will
Uh-huh.
be these myceliated grain products. Are you familiar with a product called tempeh?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, tempeh is, do you know what tempeh is?
Um, well, it's tofu in it. It's soy. I mean, it's a soy-based
Very good. Yep, yep. Do
um,
you know how it's fermented soy?
fermented. Yeah, right. That's the word I was
Do you
trying
know
to
what
think
they
of.
ferment it with?
That I don't know.
A fungus.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah,
that would. Yeah.
yeah. So they
So
ferment it
it's
with a
alcohol,
fungus.
right? Does
Well,
it kind
no,
of
it's
use
not
a?
actually producing alcohol, but you
No,
can
no, but
get
I meant
fungi that
for.
will.
Yeah, yeah. I was just
So the
saying for.
fermentation, yeah. So what
Hmm.
happens, and it's a fermentation where what they do is they cook
Right.
these soybeans,
Uh-huh.
they'll put this fungus on it,
Uh-huh.
and the mycelium will
Okay.
grow and completely colonize these cooked soybeans.
Okay.
And then they
That makes
basically
sense.
sell it as a food.
Yeah.
Think about that for a minute. So what these people are growing, they're growing a food product, but they're
Mm-hmm.
grinding it up and drying it out and
Uh,
selling it as a nutritional supplement. They can get 10 times as much money for it that way.
oh,
It's not
interesting.
really
Okay.
a true, because there's no mushroom involved. No
Yeah.
mushroom, period.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, tempeh I've eaten for years, but as a food,
Well,
not as
yeah,
a.
it's a good food. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
absolutely good food. I mean, in out in Indonesia and stuff. I mean, it's a very, very
Well, and
major food group
Japan.
out there.
And Japan as well.
In Japan as well. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. No, it's good. Absolutely. But it's a food. It's not
Yeah.
something that it's like, can you imagine? Okay, you're being asked to take two capsules, which is a 1,000 milligrams. We're talking about 10 grams of fresh tofu. That would be one bite, probably.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
fresh tempeh, be about
Yeah.
one bite. It's like, that's not really going to work.
No.
So I mean, that's what you have to be careful about out there. And again, what I tell people is the first thing you should do is put mushrooms into your diet.
Mm.
Shiitake, maitake, the agaricus. I still love the agaricus.
Mm.
Here it was. I was on this big farm, 2 million pounds a year of agaricus. I was eating them like crazy, and I was living with them. I still love them. They're still a great mushroom, very tasty. I
Huh.
like it, but where I live here, I mean, we're lucky if we get shiitake in occasionally.
Mm.
But where you are, you can go into your
Oh
Whole
yeah.
Foods or other market, and the mushroom section is like, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, we have a market. They have two markets here in Marin County that are all organic.
Wow. Wow.
The whole store is
Yeah,
organic.
that's very cool. Yeah. See, we used to have one of those here in my little community, but
Uh-huh.
it just couldn't. make it,
Yeah.
unfortunately, because a lot of people, it's a small community, a lot of like, it's too expensive, I can't buy that or
Yeah.
something. And it's like, well, come on. I
Yeah.
mean, are vegetables really that expensive, even if they're organically grown? I mean, yeah, I kind of get it, but look, come on, support
It
the
depends on
industry.
what your, well, and it depends on what your priorities are, right?
It is, absolutely is.
You know,
But I mean,
we don't mind spending more to know that it's organic.
I sure
That's,
don't.
yeah, I mean, that's where we're coming from. And obviously there's a lot of other people
Yeah,
there as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
But we are an upscale community to a
sure.
certain degree,
Yeah, yeah,
where we are. You know,
that's
it's not,
right.
I mean, we're not living in Beverly Hills or something like that, but
No.
it's, you know, we're not living in the expensive parts of San Francisco, but it is, you know, most of the people
Yeah,
can
and I
afford
think,
some of it. Let's put it that
yeah,
way.
and look, I mean, you don't even have to go for the more expensive mushrooms. You can just
Mm-mm.
eat the button mushrooms, put those into your diet because those are good. They have medicinal benefits too,
Hmm.
and again, it's just a really good food. And
Yeah.
like I said, I consider it the forgotten food. And
Hmm.
and let me give you a tip too, because when you're cooking a mushroom, it's important to cook it on high heat. And
Oh,
this is maybe
okay.
true for a lot of things. If you're frying, if you put a mushroom and you throw it in the pan with whatever your favorite oil
Hmm.
is to cook it with, um, if it's too low a heat, what happens? All the water comes right out of it,
Okay, that makes
and
sense.
now those mushrooms are floating in liquid. And you're
Hmm.
wondering why
Yeah.
kids will say, "Oh man, those things are slimy. They're,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they hate the texture, right?" And it's like, ugh. When
Yeah.
you fry them up on a high heat, you can
Uh-huh.
brown either side. You seal in the
Oh, and seal
moisture.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, as you know, when you chop them all up, okay, that looks like a lot. You throw them in the pan, and by the time you're finished, you're like, where did they go? They
This
shrunk.
much. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
figure
Yeah.
they'll
You always
shrink
have to
up to half their size.
at least. Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
always use twice or three times as much as you think
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah.
And I like to slice them maybe a quarter of an inch thick or something. Don't slice them too
Okay.
thinly.
Oh,
Keep them
okay.
fairly thick,
Okay.
because that way you can keep the moisture in there.
Yeah.
And again, I sometimes, if I'm just frying them up in a pan by themselves, when I go to flip them and stuff, well, they're not all being flipped. I'll sometimes just like turn them over by hand so that I can brown both sides of them. And
Hmm.
and on their own, they're delicious. A little bit of
Yeah.
salt, a little bit of pepper, something delicious. And then I'm a meat eater. I eat them with almost any piece of meat that I eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you can
I
put,
like
I
to
mean, they're
put them
so
in eggs.
versatile. Eggs, stir fries,
Oh, yeah, that too.
you name it. You
Yep.
can basically put them in anything. I mean, I sometimes will, because sometimes uh, I'm pretty simple in my cooking. I will just
Hmm.
steam up vegetables and stuff. But
Yeah.
then at times I go,
That's what
oh
I
my
do.
God, uh, boring. So maybe I'll pre-steam them sometimes, and then I will throw them into a fry
Yes.
pan
Yeah.
and fry
Very
them up.
fast.
Sometimes I'll put a little bit of maybe I've got this. What is it? The Japanese sauce that you can use. There's a couple of different sauces that I'll
Yeah.
sometimes throw in with them,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then I've got them all. I've got broccoli in there. I've got
Yep.
maybe some green or red peppers,
Yeah.
and
Can't do that. My
and then
husband likes
I'll
that.
how
No,
about
no, I'm
Brussels
allergic to
sprouts?
them. I can't,
Okay, how about Brussels
literally
sprouts?
can't
You
eat
like
them.
Brussels sprouts?
I love Brussels sprouts. Yeah.
I mean, have you noticed how now in restaurants they will serve
Yes.
up, like up here, they'll cut them in half and they'll fry them
Fry.
up with
Oh,
something, and they'll serve
yes.
them as an hors d'oeuvre, and you're like,
Yes.
wow,
Yeah, I know.
delicious.
I know. I know. Oh, they're great. I try and make them at home. I can't do it quite as well as they do, but I come close.
I do the
It's
same thing
really
with them
pretty
now,
easy. Yeah. Yeah.
and with most Brussels sprouts, they can be really kind of sweet. They're really
Oh, yes.
tasty. I mean,
Yeah.
man, I used to hate Brussels sprouts as a kid. Now I love them.
Yeah. And exactly. I always liked them growing up. I was one of those weird kids. Certain things I didn't
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
um, but those I liked. Um, yeah, I make eggs, like scrambled, like a
yep,
scramble with
yep,
lots of
yep, yep,
vegetables in it.
yep.
And then my husband takes his part of it and he puts bell peppers in
Okay.
for
Okay. Yeah.
himself.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
he puts it in something and he eats a little bit of that every day for breakfast.
Wow. Cool. Well, you know what?
And then he puts sliced mushrooms on top when he heats it and cheese on top.
Wow. Now
Mhm.
there's the guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me, eggs, it's got to be scrambled. I don't like eggs that are cooked any other. And also, cooking it and just alone. No, I got to throw in everything, all sorts of veggies in there.
I know. I know. Exactly. Exactly. And then there's so little eggs left
I
after you
know,
put all
but
the,
I know,
but
but it doesn't really matter because it's like,
yeah, I know.
I just want to have a nice, lots of different stuff in
Yeah.
there. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
mushrooms can be a
Exactly.
big part of
So
any and all different
absolutely.
food
Absolutely. And different
preparations
kinds
and
of mushrooms too, like you're
different
saying,
kinds
because
of mushrooms.
they taste differently.
Each one has a different flavor.
Yeah. And so, it makes for a little, a change of
Absolutely
taste.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely right. And that's why, where you are, and a lot of your listeners maybe are in the same area, or if you're on the West Coast, I mean,
Yeah.
most
No, we have
cities and towns
people from all over, I think
all
that
over.
listen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So just go to the right market, and you'll probably find them, especially shiitake. Shiitake should be everywhere these days. And again, that's
Hmm.
really such a delicious,
Yeah.
delicious
Yeah. No,
mushroom. In
absolutely.
China, it's called the fragrant mushroom.
Ah, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. The name
Interesting.
is Shangu, and it's like
Uh-huh.
gu is a word for mushroom, and it's called fragrant mushroom.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. See, now I just taught you a Chinese word.
You did, and I probably won't
Yeah, I
remember what
know,
it is
and
because
I know.
I'm not taking my lion's mane.
Yeah, I know. Me neither. And I can only remember about 25 Chinese words. But my son is actually, who works with me in the business, he's
Uh-huh.
actually studying Chinese, and he's got a Chinese
Wow.
tutor, and he has Chinese classes, like I think three
Yeah,
classes a week, an hour per class.
that's
And
great.
he's actually pretty good. Yeah, it's an
Yeah.
international world these days. I have a
Oh my
brother
God.
that lives in Shanghai, works for a very big multinational corporation. Been living in Shanghai for 6 years or something like that. So every
Wow.
time we go to China, we get together with him and have dinner and do a few things. And so it's great to see him there once a year anyway.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Oh no, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sure his Chinese is probably pretty good.
Actually, not. He kind of started, but then gave it up. He actually lived in Japan for 15 to 20 years. Has a
Uh-huh.
Japanese wife and
Okay.
knows Japanese fluently.
Oh,
But
okay.
no, he kind of gave it up, uh, trying to learn Chinese. But
Uh-huh. Yeah, interesting.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
International world, and that's kind of,
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's
No, no. I worked for many years in the supply chain and transportation industry,
uh-huh.
running, and I started when it was ships. I mean, they still run ships,
Wow.
but that was the biggest, with all the containers and all of that, and there were a
Wow.
lot of
Wow.
different companies. Now there aren't that many. They've all
Of course,
consolidated.
yeah. Well,
But
and you look at the size of those container ports these days. Oh my God.
uh-huh. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No,
Wow.
they used to be a lot smaller, but
Yeah. Lots of trade going on.
oh, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, true.
So, anyways, okay, why don't we kind of wrap this up? Why don't you give us, you know, the
My closing.
your closing short version of kind of overview of what we've been talking about, what people should really take away from the conversation, and what, to you who've been in this business a long time, an area, not just business, but what are the most important things for people to remember, whether it's buying fresh mushrooms or with supplements?
Well, first of all, if you're not eating a lot of mushrooms right
Mhm.
now, put them into your diet, eat more of them. There's actually a lot of studies out there that have been done in Asia that show that when they do these big studies of populations, people who eat mushrooms live longer. There's
Wow.
actually, you are getting not just the very sound nutritional benefits, but you're
Uh-huh.
getting medicinal benefits. So it is a classic food as medicine. If you
Okay.
want to go a little further and supplement with mushrooms, the one
Mm-hmm.
that I really recommend as your best bet would be reishi mushroom.
Mm.
In China, they actually call it the mushroom of immortality. That's
Oh,
why I take
okay.
so much of it.
Yeah.
And so, and the other thing, if you're eating mushrooms, be sure you cook them properly, or your kids are going to hate you for them, and they'll pull them off
Yeah.
to the side, and you'll look at the
Yeah.
plate that's all cleaned up except all those poor mushrooms that are laying there, and they're just
Okay.
complaining about them.
Yeah.
So put mushrooms into your diet. If you need to supplement, reishi is a good one. Lion's mane is another one that you might look at if you start to reach that point where I am, where I can't remember everything in the world. And look, what can I say, Susan? I mean, let's face it. I've got so much stuff in my brain.
Oh,
How can I
please.
fit it all in? I've
Yeah.
got to get rid of it. I mean, can I download it off to an external hard drive and then have more?
Unfortunately, no. Would be nice. It would be nice,
I
but
know, I know. We're all
unfortunately,
waiting
we
for that.
can't. Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
make mushrooms,
Uh-huh.
eat them fresh, and
Okay.
when you're supplementing, again, be careful when you're purchasing a supplement out
Yeah, it
there.
sounds like it.
Um, it may be the most popular one, but you might find out that
Yeah.
it actually is not a real mushroom. Look at the facts panel. If it says mycelium, if it says grain in the other, avoid it. Try to find one.
Okay.
And a lot of the good ones now will say 30% beta glucan. So look
Okay.
for something like that as
Okay.
well. That's another
Okay. Good.
something that you can be
That's
looking
good to
for.
know. Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. So, just out of curiosity, are mushrooms like so many other vegetables where it really is better to cook them, even if it's just a little bit, to get the
You're better off
yeah.
actually cooking mushrooms. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to harm you to eat them
No,
raw
no,
if you
no.
want to
It's
have them
just more,
occasionally
it's
in a
more
salad or
accessible,
something.
or
It
maybe that's
is
not the right
absolutely,
word.
yes.
That's for all food. I mean, all
That's right. When you
vegetables.
cook them up, you will actually be getting more benefits from them. So
Yeah, yeah,
definitely,
yeah. You don't want to
definitely
cook
cook
them
them.
so they're mushy, but just a
No.
little bit so they're still firm and
Yeah, and yeah,
yeah.
and again, I do like to cook them when I'm cooking them in my oil or whatever. I do like to cook them a
Uh-huh.
little longer, like maybe 10 minutes or something like that. But
Uh-huh.
again, flip them over,
Oh
brown them
yeah.
up,
Yeah.
and they'll be much better than those
Yeah.
soggy things that are in a
Yeah.
cold
Oh
pan.
no, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I use ghee to cook it.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Ghee's getting very popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So okay, well, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate your time and sharing your knowledge.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It's been very enjoyable.
Well, thank you. I'm glad. I didn't feel like I was giving you the third degree about anything.
No, 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 not at all.
So, okay, well, let me do my little spiel here at the end, which is that I am not a doctor. This is not medical advice. If you are having an issue, a medical issue, please go and talk to your doctor and or go to the emergency room if it's of that level of an emergency. And so that all of that being said, I will look forward to talking to everybody next week.